After the Hiroshima bombing, thousands of survivors stumbled from the rubble with severe burns and skin hanging from their bodies. The streets filled with people screaming in pain, and somehow someone captured it all on film. In this video, I'll reveal what the footage shows, why it was hidden for decades, and how it finally resurfaced. The drop. On the morning of August 6, 1945, Hiroshima had roughly 340,000 to 350,000 people, including a military garrison of about 24,000 troops. At 2:45 a.m. local time on Tinian Island, a B-29 superfortress named Enola Gay took off alongside two other aircraft, the great artiste for instrumentation and necessary evil for photography. In the bomb bay sat Little Boy, a uranium gun-type fission device weighing about 9,000 pounds, with a yield of approximately 15 kilotons of TNT. It had never been tested at full scale. They were dropping it on a city as its first live use. At about 7:00 a.m. Hiroshima time, air raid sirens sounded. Then came an all clear. People went back to their routines, commuting, working, tearing down buildings to create fire breaks. Students were out doing demolition duty. At approximately 8:12 a.m., Enola Gay began its bombing run. At 8:15 a.m., Bombardier Major Thomas Ferriby called bomb away. Little Boy fell for 43 to 53 seconds. Tibbets banked the plane into a 155-degree turn to escape the blast. At 8:16 a.m., the bomb detonated at approximately 1,900 feet above the Shima hospital. The fireball reached roughly 900 feet in diameter within 1 second. The mushroom cloud rose past 60,000 feet. About 50 seconds after detonation, the shock wave reached the plane 11.5 miles away. On the ground, the blast wave destroyed or damaged most buildings within 2 to 3 kilometers. The thermal flash caused severe burns and ignited fires across the city. Ionizing radiation, gamma rays, and neutrons hit anyone within 1 to 2 kilometers who survived the heat and the blast. 2/3 of the city was destroyed. About 30 to 45 minutes later, black rain, a mixture of soot, dust, and radioactive fission products, fell in the northwest areas. People drank it. They did not know what it was. An estimated 70,000 to 80,000 people were dead or dying. The footage they buried. In the weeks and months following the bombing, two separate film teams entered the ruins. The first was Japanese cameramen from Nippon Eigasha, the country's leading newsreel company, who began documenting the devastation almost immediately. They shot roughly 26,000 feet of black and white footage, showing survivors wandering through wreckage, overwhelmed hospitals, and the sheer scale of what had been erased. But when US occupation forces arrived, they seized the material. Japanese filmmakers, suspecting this would happen, secretly made copies and hid some of the film. The second team was American, and it produced the footage that would become the centerpiece of the suppression story. Lieutenant Cole Daniel A. McGovern, an experienced combat cameraman, led teams for the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey. Working alongside him were Lieutenant Herbert Susan and a Japanese cameraman named Akira Hari Mimura, who had trained in Hollywood. What they captured was staggering in its detail and its horror. The reels showed flattened cityscapes where buildings looked as though they had been crushed by a massive anvil. They showed the haunting silhouettes known as ghost shadows, permanent marks scorched into stone where human beings had been standing when the thermal flash vaporized them. They showed people lying by the roadside like sick animals. They showed hospital wards crammed with patients covered in radiation burns, their skin raw and blistered, their hair falling out in clumps. One sequence showed a patient submerged in a penicillin bath, flesh exposed, being treated for injuries that would likely never fully heal. They showed piles of bones and skulls gathered at the ruins of schools. In 1946, the footage was classified as secret. It was shipped to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and locked away. The reasoning was straightforward. The United States was entering a nuclear arms race with the Soviet Union. Officials did not want the American public to see color footage of burned women and dead children at a moment when the government was investing in building more powerful nuclear weapons. What they lived through. The footage matters because it corroborates what survivors have been saying for 8 decades. Only one person is known to have photographed the immediate aftermath inside Hiroshima on the day of the bombing itself. His name was Yoshito Matsushige. He was a staff photographer for the Chugoku Shimbun newspaper and a member of a military media team. He was approximately 27 kilometers, about 17 miles, from the epicenter. He survived with minor injuries and went out with his camera into the devastation. He managed to take 5 photographs that day. They showed scenes at Miyuki Bridge roughly 3 hours after the detonation. Severely burned survivors, including junior high school students, being treated with cooking oil by police officers. He photographed damaged buildings, including his own family's barbershop and abandoned bandaged policeman distributing emergency rice ration certificates to survivors in the late afternoon. He was too overwhelmed to take more. Other survivor accounts describe the same unbearable specifics. People emerged from the rubble with their skin hanging off their arms and faces, peeled away by the thermal pulse, draping from their bodies as they walked. They described seeing crowds of silent, shuffling figures moving through smoke and dust, arms outstretched, flesh melting, barely recognizable as human. Acute radiation syndrome struck thousands who had survived the initial blast and burns. Symptoms included nausea and vomiting within hours, followed by a deceptive improvement period. Then came hair loss, uncontrollable bleeding from the gums and other orifices, plummeting white blood cell counts, and rampant infections. Many died within 2 to 4 weeks. Those who survived the acute phase carried their injuries forward for the rest of their lives. Keloid scars covered the bodies of burn survivors. Hiroshima in context. The conventional bombing campaigns of World War II had already produced staggering carnage before the atomic bomb existed. The most deadly single air raid in the history of warfare was not Hiroshima. It was the firebombing of Tokyo on March 9-10, 1945, designated Operation Meeting House. More than 300 B-29 bombers dropped approximately 1,665 tons of incendiary napalm clusters on the densely packed wooden neighborhoods of eastern Tokyo. The resulting firestorm killed an estimated 90 to 100 people in a single night, more immediate deaths than the initial day of Hiroshima. 16 square miles of the city were incinerated. Over 1 million people were left without shelter. Survivors' accounts describe rivers boiling, people combusting where they stood, and streets so clogged with charred remains that they were impassable. In Europe, the firestorm at Hamburg during Operation Gomorrah in July 1943 provided a grim precedent. Combined RAF and USAAF raids created a firestorm that killed between 42 and 50 people. Temperatures inside the burning city exceeded 10 degrees Celsius. Winds reached 150 miles per hour, powerful enough to suck the oxygen from underground shelters, suffocating those who had not been burned alive. Then came Dresden in February 1945. Roughly 800 RAF Lancasters hit the city on the night of February 13, followed by American daylight raids on the 14th and 15th. The resulting firestorm obliterated the cultural center and the refugee-packed streets around it. The atomic bomb was not a departure from strategic bombing doctrine. It was in a sense the completion of it. 3 days after Hiroshima, the second bomb fell. On August 9, 1945, the B-29 Boxcar dropped Fat Man, a plutonium implosion device, over Nagasaki. The bomb killed an estimated 40 to 80 people by the end of 1945. What it all means. The traditional justification for Hiroshima holds that the bombs ended the war and prevented something far worse. The planned invasion of the Japanese home islands, Operation Downfall, carried estimated Allied casualty projections ranging from hundreds of thousands to over 1 million, with Japanese military and civilian losses potentially reaching catastrophic levels as well. The interim committee had recommended using the weapon against Japan as soon as possible, on a war plant surrounded by workers' homes, without prior specific warning, precisely to maximize the shock that would compel surrender. In this framing, the atomic bomb was the lesser evil, a horrifying act that nonetheless saved a greater number of lives than any alternative. The revisionist counter-argument, advanced most prominently by historian Gar Alperovitz in his atomic diplomacy thesis, challenges every element of this narrative. Alperovitz and others contend that Japan was already near defeat by August 1945, its navy destroyed, its cities burned, its economy strangled by blockade. The Soviet Union's declaration of war on Japan and its invasion of Manchuria on August 9, the same day as the Nagasaki bombing, was, in this view, at least as decisive in breaking the deadlock in Tokyo's war cabinet as the atomic bombs themselves. The revisionist case argues that the bombs were partly, or even primarily, intended as a demonstration of American power aimed at the Soviet Union, atomic diplomacy designed to shape the post-war order, intimidate Stalin, and justify the enormous investment of the Manhattan Project. The suppression of the McGovern footage is central to both sides of this argument. For those who believe the bombings were necessary, the classification was a pragmatic wartime and Cold War decision, protecting sensitive information during the nuclear arms race. For critics, the suppression is evidence of something more damaging, a deliberate effort to shield the American public from the full human consequences of the weapon their government had used, at the precise moment when the US was developing the hydrogen bomb and building an arsenal of thousands of warheads. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.